Hey guys, Hawk20 here, and today we're talking about the top 5 OTPs. Now for those of you who don't know what an OTP is, it's called a one-true pair or pairing. For those unfamiliar with this term, it's basically how fandoms describe their favorite couples. Now, there's a lot of them in the anime world, but today we're gonna focus on shipping some ships. So let's dive in. As you can see, the first one is Helena and Cleveland. And that's all. What? There isn't any other major OTP that matters right now. I mean, the game literally recognizes this one as well. And there is nothing, and I mean nothing, that can be done that will make me change my mind. So now that we've already covered one of the members of this popular pairing, let's move on to the other one, USS Helena. Just like Cleveland, Helena is one of the few USS light cruisers that are highly regarded. However, she doesn't have as many nicknames as Cleveland does, and, well, she also is missing a few other things as well. You'll start give her an old skin plate. Regardless of which, let's take a look into what makes Helena the character that she is. Being a light cruiser, Helena is within a ship type known for its anti-air stat, and she honestly has a pretty good one as well. Of course, it's nowhere near our number one. Unfortunately, she isn't the tankiest character as her health pool is on the lower end of the spectrum. She also has light armor, which means that she is extremely weak to high explosive ammo types. Compared to several other elite light cruisers, her evasion is a tad bit lower, so it means she's more likely to get hit. Her survival game isn't the best, but let's go ahead and take a look at her offensive game. Now, her firepower is a tad bit higher than most. Unfortunately, the firepower difference isn't really enough to be noticeable. Her reload also seems about average when compared to other light cruisers of her rarity. Given that her status is as a gunboat, she has no torpedo attack but gains an additional main gun mount when limit broken. Speaking of limit breaking, her main gun efficiency is really the only one that changes. So if you haven't limit broken her yet, her DD gun and her anti-air gun efficiencies are in the as-is state. Now her main gun does go up by 30% efficiency, which is a considerable jump, and that'll definitely help her squeeze out more damage if necessary. Now I know that a lot of you have been requesting the late game stats, so what I've decided to do here is to show her level 100 stats so that players can see the end result for the basics of leveling. Now this leveling is a bit easier to do since the resources needed here aren't as difficult to obtain. The level 120 grind requires resources that are not as easily obtained and can take some time before getting the necessary amount. However, I'll show the level 120 stats so that players can see her at her highest peak. As you all can see, she gains a decent amount to all of her stats. The decent jumps in her health pool and evasion are definitely two areas that she really needs, as survival feels like her weakest area at the moment. Now her overall stat line isn't the worst, but I have had a little bit of a tough time trying to keep her alive in my fleets. It might be in one's best interest to rely on evasion equips or health boosting equips in order to allow her to help stay alive. Then again, I guess you could rely on a healer type, but we'll talk about all that stuff later on. Now the real reason I do love to use her is because she has one of the best skills I think in the game. Helena's lone skill is Radar Scan, which has up to a 60% chance every 20 seconds to increase the damage enemies take by up to 40% for 10 seconds. This is a crazy powerful skill as it causes enemies to straight up melt, and bosses can take some serious damage if it's coordinated well enough with your backline, and I honestly suggest doing this. The only one drawback is that this debuff is a one-time debuff, which means that it only affects the currently on-screen enemies. If an enemy spawns after the skill procs, then the buff isn't applied to them. So this will be best applied to enemies who you don't expect to die quickly, such as event elite nodes or flagship fleets themselves. Overall, she's got a decent stat line with a few weaknesses, but her skill is probably one of the best to use when you really want to dish out some serious damage. So the real question now is whether one should use her in a boss fleet or a mob fleet vanguard. I would say that while she can be used in mob fleets, she's best utilized in boss fleets. Her skill's main weakness is that it only applies to active enemies at the time of the debuff. This is unlike Cleveland's skill, which acts as a passive buff for the fleet and has usefulness outside of the enemies currently active on screen. With mob fleets, your fleet's damage output is probably high enough that there won't be a lot of enemies to be affected by the debuff when it activates. This can also have some really bad timing, as you might have cleared out all the enemies already and it procs right before the next group appears. Now with boss fleets, it's not likely that the boss will die before the debuff can be effective, so the skill can be extremely useful here. Just remember that RNG is a thing, and it might not happen when you want it to. Thankfully, a 60% chance is still relatively nice. However, when it procs, you can expect the boss to take massive damage if you hold your backline to strike immediately after the skill procs, something which I highly suggest you do. Because of the nature of this skill, she's best suited with characters known for their high damage output like Enterprise or even Ayanami. Of course, there is the duo that is Helena and Cleveland, and as I had mentioned in Cleveland's video, their skills do work together. One thing I do want to make sure that everyone knows is that the chances of both of their skills proccing at the same time is still very, very low, but when it does happen, it is going to be a nasty combination. However, her skill allows for a lot of flexibility with fleet composition, so that is really a huge plus as anyone could benefit from having her in play. Overall, Helena is a light cruiser that has a decent if not average stat line. Her main rise to fame is that her skill enables everyone to dish out more damage on whoever they are fighting. It's a bit unfortunate that I've had a few issues with her surviving against higher level bosses, but that is a risk that's worth taking if her skill can enable my backline to wipe out the boss very quickly. In my opinion, she's definitely worth the leveling and is worth giving her a chance to shine in your boss fleets. And that'll be all for Helena. Hopefully you guys all enjoyed this video and that it will help you in your future sorties. We are continuing to get through this list of characters. If you see a character not on this list that I have not covered yet, then let me know in the comments below. I will get to them in due time, do not worry. Next up is Amagi, so look forward to that video when it comes out. Whether you are a regular viewer or a patron supporting the channel on Patreon, thanks for watching and I'll see you all again in the next video that I do.